Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. The Vatican made a historic announcement today, rejecting the Doctrine of Discovery. Sav Jonza has that story.
After numerous calls to rescind a 15th century doctrine, the Vatican stopped short of that today. Instead, they repudiated the doctrine's concepts as never been considered expressions of the Catholic faith. The Doctrine of Discovery is widely known as a tool of colonization, used to justify Christian conquest of indigenous peoples and take their lands. Written in 1493, the doctrine asserts that European people and culture are superior to all others. Indigenous peoples in Canada have been calling for the modern Vatican to rescind it, cries that grew louder during the Pope's visit in July 2022. Rose LeMay, CEO of Indigenous Reconciliation Group, says that visit played into today's announcement.
I do actually think that the Pope has been choosing to do his own learning journey. He spent quite a while on the lands of what we now call Canada, hearing from survivors of residential schools, which were completely enabled by the Doctrine of Discovery. And I think it took him some days and weeks to come to that point of admitting it was a genocide. This is a difficult learning journey. When one has been told through the traditions of centuries that, quote, we're doing the right thing, it takes a while to come around to the fact that, no, actually, this was not a good thing. There was nothing good about it.
Indigenous Services Minister Mark Miller had this to say.
Is important. I think over time the Catholic Church has turned its mind really to doing right by Indigenous peoples. They are making strides, and like Canada, probably making some mistakes as well. But I think it is important to recognize the work that got put into making this happen, and it doesn't come overnight. It doesn't come without the advocacy of Indigenous groups or work within the Vatican. So very historically significant, and I believe it is truly an important step in recognizing the harm that's been done by acknowledging the impact of these papal bulls.
Sav Jonza, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Joining us now to talk over the announcement is our Truth in Politics panel. Carrie Benjo, the editor of Eagle Feather News, and Egon Sinclair, a columnist at the Winnipeg Free Press and a University of Manitoba professor. Carrie and Egon, great as always. Carrie, let's start with you. What do you make of this, and what does it mean?
I'm still stunned. I wasn't expecting it, but I'm just looking at the next steps. For a lot of people, I think they're still just going to be taking in the information, because this has been a long-standing demand by Indigenous people. When the Pope visited this summer, there were signs saying, rescind the Doctrine of Discovery. This is something that has been actively pursued for decades, and now to have some sort of movement on it, I think people are just right now just absorbing it, and so am I right now.
Yeah, no kidding. Egon, your thoughts on this, and any idea on the timing of it?
I think it comes on the heels of the visit from last summer. It's evidence that this is the most progressive Pope in history, trying to move what is a historically slow organization. To have something that this quickly to change within a year, we think back to just a year ago during the apology. I think that the Vatican thought this is enough, coming all the way to Canada to make an apology. But what they saw and what they heard and what they experienced was that it needed to go much farther. The apology needed to do more, and part of that was rescinding the Doctrine of Discovery. But we're not quite there yet, and whether they rescinded or repudiate, people have been talking about that language. It really doesn't matter, because what it does is it places pressure on the federal government to do something about this, because the fact is that the Catholic Church has thought that the Doctrine of Discovery has been ineffectual and somewhat wrong for a period of years now, but it's governments that return stolen land, not the church.
Carrie, do you think now with the apology, the repudiation, do you think any of this, that we're heading down the road now to compensation?
I think we see movement. I wasn't quite expecting, like Egon said, such quick movement on this, on this work, the work on the doctrine, I can now see this actually happening. Compensation actually coming forth, because for years I didn't think this was going to happen, and it happened. And so next step, I think, will probably be compensation, hopefully.
Right. Nigan, as you mentioned, some talk around the language, whether it's rejecting, repudiating. The Government of Canada has also rejected the Doctrine of Discovery. So is this move largely ceremonial?
Well, like most things, I spoke to a reporter this morning, and I said, like most things with Indigenous peoples, it's fine and good to say whatever you want, but to take action on those things is the significant part. It's taken over 500 years for the Catholic Church to see us as human beings. What that means is to recognize that we have rights alongside, while we have different laws and governments, ways of doing things than European nations. It's taken Canada just as long to do that. Since the first moment of Canada, which has been built on the Doctrine of Discovery, by simply saying, oh, well, it doesn't have any purpose, or it's useless, or it's wrong, doesn't mean that Canada then turns around and returns all of the land that's been stolen. I said just a minute ago that the Catholic Church can't force the government to do so. The Catholic Church can take action and return the fact that they are on stolen land, return those lands which they've been given ownership to by the federal government to run things like residential schools, and give those back to First Nations. On top of that, the government can recognize Indigenous nations as equals, as partners in Confederation, and then, for the most part, realize that the Constitution is built on a racist premise that Indigenous peoples under Section 91 are to be controlled by the federal government. That's a direct cause from the Doctrine of Discovery. So yes, of course, you can say, oh, the Doctrine of Discovery is useless, but then you have to change the laws. You have to return the stolen land. And yes, the issue of compensation, restitution, revitalization, all has to come to the table.
Kerry, Nigan, we'll have to leave it there, but appreciate you both taking some time as always. And Nigan, safe travels.
Yeah, Miigwech, thanks so much.
Thanks.
Tension in a Winnipeg courtroom gave way to anger from some observers as retired priest Arthur Massey was acquitted this morning. He was tried in early March on a sex charge relating to his time at Fort Alexander Residential School, northeast of Winnipeg, on what is now Saugeen First Nation. APTN's Leanne Sanders reports.
Victoria McIntosh was visibly upset as the judge announced her not guilty verdict. The 63-year-old complainant in the case avoided reporters as she left the courthouse. One of her supporters spoke briefly, saying there was no justice today for victims.
Well, we saw the results today, didn't we? We saw the no justice.
The judge believed her story, just not that she could identify.
But she's not the only one that this happened to.
Justice Candace Grammond said in her decision she found McIntosh to be a credible witness, but was not convinced Massey was the priest who committed the assault against her. The Southern Chiefs Organization issued a statement on the decision, saying, "I extend my prayers to Victoria McIntosh and commend you for your bravery in coming forward to seek justice. It is extremely difficult to confront the abuse one has experienced as a child." And the liaison for the SCO's Survivors Healing Program, Martina Fisher, said she was not surprised at the acquittal because she says the church and state work together. The truth of the matter is that the church will never 100% admit that there are these faults that they committed, because if they do, that will mean they will have the responsibility to organize healing strategies with the First Nations. Massey was arrested last June after a decade-long RCMP investigation. The now 93-year-old priest showed no emotion at the verdict and also avoided reporters as he left the courthouse. Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
5 people were arrested by RCMP at a Wet'suwet'en village known as the Gittenden Access Point. They say it's harassment, but BC RCMP say they were searching for stolen goods after an incident involving a pipeline worker. APTN's Lee Wilson has that story.
Video provided by Get 'em Dan shows at least 8 vehicles with RCMP officers arriving to search the Get 'em Dan village site on a forestry road near Houston yesterday. RCMP arrested 5 land offenders for obstruction of a peace officer. Wet'suwet'en Hereditary Chief Namox traveled to the territory to speak with those who remained. He has an issue with the arrests.
5 were arrested because the police wanted to put them outside of our fenced area so they couldn't watch what's going on. Well, we don't trust CERG the same way we don't trust Foresight Security. We want to watch what they're doing. And they arrested them for saying that they weren't being compliant. They did throw one gentleman on the ground. They punched him, put him onto face first into the ice. Another lady, they had put the zip ties on her wrists and cut off her circulation to her hands.
In a press release, RCMP said they are executing a search warrant, investigating an act of violence against pipeline personnel. On March 26, 11:40 p.m., the Houston RCMP responded to a complaint from Coastal GasLink Security that one of the workers had been swarmed by a group of individuals wearing masks and camouflage at the 43-kilometer mark on the Maurice West Forest Service Road. Wet'suwet'en Hereditary Chiefs remain opposed to a pipeline running through their traditional territory. Coastal GasLink, the pipeline builder, has agreements with 20 First Nation band councils along the 670-kilometer route, transporting natural gas from northeast BC to a terminal in Kitimat. Chief Namox stated, the chiefs have authority over 22,000 square kilometers of land.
We've never ceded nor surrendered, signed a treaty. So we've never given up our authority. And I always bring up the fact with Delgamo Castebe court case, we went there as a hereditary system. We did not go there as an elected system. And we used our traditional names in that court case. And in there, when they say Crown land, it is not.
Last summer, Wet'suwet'en members filed a civil claim against the RCMP, BC Minister of Justice, Coastal GasLink Pipeline, Foresight Security, alleging targeted harassment and intimidation. Chief Namox said, they just want to defend the land.
We live there 365 days a year. They're our homes. They are not protest camps. We're simply defending what we have.
Lee Wilson, APTN National News, Kitimat.
Time for a quick break. Still to come, we'll take you on the search for a young man missing in British Columbia. Stick around. Welcome back. A missing young man from Merritt, British Columbia hasn't been heard from since February 27th. Tina House has part 2 of that story.
So today, I believe we're going to head out down to Highway 8 towards Newayat Reserve and check the rivers, the hillsides, and yeah, go from there.
Elijah Mack Sterling is Miguel Mack's oldest brother. He is heading up the search for his brother Miguel. 24-year-old Miguel Mack was last seen on February the 27th at this 7-Eleven convenience store in downtown Merritt, BC. Every day since he's been missing, family members and volunteers meet up at the family home to make a search plan. It's a daunting area to look, vast with mountainous terrain, rivers, creeks, swamps, and old abandoned buildings. Elijah says it's almost overwhelming to figure out what to do and where to go. This map shows areas circled in red, which have been searched already.
We get places of interest, and then we go there, we find nothing, and it's like, okay, back to square one. And then the next day we do something again, and it's like dead end, come back. So to keep coming back to this map, trying to figure out where to go next, it comes harder and harder every day.
Some days, 30 to 40 people volunteer to search for 24-year-old Miguel. But today, about 10 people have gathered at the family home, including Miguel's dad, Andrew Andy, who traveled here with his sister from Bella Coola to look for his boy.
Yeah, the challenge is, will I be the one to find him? And what will I find if, in fact, I do come across him? And am I mentally prepared to deal with it? So that sort of wades through your mind. And it's really a moment of growth spiritually, because you got to dig deeper than yourself. And you know, it has physical challenges, but the mental challenges just to be out there.
Elijah is himself a young leader in the community. He says his background in administration and business helps him apply those skills to leading and organizing the search. And as we head out, I had a chance to talk with Elijah about combing these streets in downtown Merritt.
Just like any search, you want to cover all grounds that, are possible leads. We've hit up and down alleyways. Sadly, Mom has checked through some dumpsters.
And as we travel a few kilometers out of town to the backcountry, Elijah says the possibilities seem endless of where his brother could be, and will they find him alive. He also has to contend with being a leader for this search and just being a brother.
Well, what makes it extremely challenging is that my brother and I, we grew up here. 20 years of our lives spent in these streets, whether it be swimming at the clay banks, part of town just over here, or going for a hike up this mountain here to the flagpole, going for bike rides.
So lots of memories growing up here, and obviously never thought here you'd be looking for your brother.
Sorry.
It's okay, I know this is very emotional. We really appreciate you doing this with us, Elijah.
I've been doing so well at keeping myself together. Yeah, just, so many memories in this town.
And here at Spies Creek, after putting on hip waders and rubber boots, the search team prepares to search the water, and armed with long sticks, they poke at various places as they go, looking for anything that might help locate him. And for Elijah, he has another grim and difficult job, throwing an end of a rake attached to a rope and dragging the rope in the search of his own brother in the water. And for Miguel's dad watching from the bridge,
you do what you have to do. If in fact we do find him, it really would help put closure.
And back at Miguel's mom's house, otherwise known as the command center, there is hope that this is the day they find Miguel, or clues about what happened to him.
I just want him to come home. I just want him home, and he's loved, he's missed, and his babies need him. We need him still.
If you have any information about the disappearance of Miguel Mack, you are asked to call the police. You can remain anonymous. Tina House, APTN National News, Merritt.
APTN Investigates will wrap up its 4-part series Inside Corrections tomorrow night. We got a preview coming up after the break. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. And this beauty was sent in by Clarence Jones, a photo of the Seven Sisters mountain range located along the Skeena River in the Gitxsan Nation in BC. Thanks for sharing, Clarence. If you have a picture, you can send it to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the east coast, +4 with snow in Halifax, 4 above in Fredericton. -2 in Kuujjuaq, cloudy and 3 below in Nain. 0 for Montreal, -1 in Val-d'Or. +2 with snow in Sault Ste. Marie, 1 and flurries for North Bay. +2 in Thunder Bay, sunny and -1 in Sioux Lookout. -5 with snow in God's Lake, flurries and 3 below for Norway House. -2 in Winnipeg, sunny and 0 for Dauphin. -2 in Regina, Saskatoon, and Swift Current. +1 in Meadow Lake, 7 below with snow in Stony Rapids. In northern Alberta, +4 in Peace River, -6 with snow in Fort Chip. 7 above in Edmonton, 11 above for Lethbridge. +8 in Vancouver, 9 above in Victoria. +5 in Prince George, 6 in Smithers. -10 in Old Crow, 3 above with snow in Whitehorse. -10 in Yellowknife, 9 below in Norman Wells. Minus 22 for Sachs Harbor, 17 below in Pawlatuck. Minus 15 with snow in Chesterfield and Whale Cove. Minus 24 in Resolute, 13 below with snow in Iqaluit. Over to Ottawa now, where Fraser Needham is standing by with a look at what's coming up on Nation to Nation.
Coming up, we'll take a deep dive into the 2023 federal budget, which was just released earlier this week. We'll have Assembly of First Nations National Chief Roseanne Archibald to tell us where she thinks the budget hits and misses the mark for Indigenous people. Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Mark Miller will talk about economic reconciliation and where this fits into this year's budget. And Indigenous Services Canada Minister Patty Hajdu will explain some of the investments in Indigenous health and housing. All this and more just around the corner.
Thanks, Fraser. Packed show. APTN Investigates returns tomorrow night with the final in a 4-part series, Inside Corrections. Video journalist Tom Fenario examines the contrast between two forms of incarceration in Canada's correctional system. Supermax prison, criticized for extreme isolation and excessive confinement, and Indigenous healing lodges with cultural services and lots of empty beds. Here's a look.
I used to live in the moment all the time, and that caused me to think, oh, well, this is it, this is the end. Just lived angrily in prison. I knew I was done. My life was over. It was at that point, in my perspective, too late. I was in prison. I was going to be there for the rest of my life.
And those places are dangerous places. It's about survival from one day to the next. You never know what's going to happen.
Active rehabilitation doesn't really occur in prison. You have to teach people how to live. It's all about money. That's the sad part about it. Money runs everything.
We don't have to be just down and out. You know, the poor beaten Indian. That's not us.
I think society has to look at what does justice really mean.
Healing isn't easy. It never was, but it sure is doable, and there is no such thing as impossible.
There's no excuse for my actions, but I've learned that there's reasons.
It's been a powerful series, and you can catch the rest of Inside Corrections, the prison, tomorrow night following the news. That is all the time we have for Warrior APTN National News for this Thursday. You can find much more on our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us. Stick around. Nation to Nation's next. Have a good night.